everyone. Welcome to Measuring Flicks. I'm Karl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson, and we are here to talk to you about movies that you may not have seen or movies that you have seen, but in much greater depth than you have ever thought about them before, at the cost of our own sanity.
Especially this month.
All right. So, since this is our first episode, we're going to tell you a little bit about the format of the show, but we're not going to belabor the point because it's really about the movies and not the thing that we're doing with them.
Right.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's early in the morning and we haven't gotten very far through our coffee yet. All right. So what we're going to do is every month we're going to watch 4 movies on a theme, essentially. Every 3 months, we are going to put all those movies in a big old pot and see which flavors rise to the top. Not a bad metaphor, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So, and
I'll
then
accept you.
At the end of each year, we're going to take the best 4 from each quarter and have a big old shootout and see what a big old shootout. And we're going to see which was the best movie that we have watched that year. What sort of movies, you ask? Are we going to go down to the local Cineplex and watch the newest Avengers flick? Go fuck yourself. No. We're watching things
I will, but we're not going to talk about them on the podcast.
No. We could actually, you know what? We could probably do some of those as Patreon only. It's be like...
True story.
The newest drivel, Ariel special, our special episode
that dripped off the taint of current
Christopher Nolan.
Right.
No, although I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan movies. No, we're gonna be watching stuff like, for example, coming up, we have a movie a month dedicated to Nicolas Cage, and not his big mainstream stuff either. We're watching things like Kiss of Death, Drive Angry, and Valley Girl. You can look forward to movies like Blue Velvet and Eraserhead. We're watching everything from the crazy exploitation films to art house films to very strange strange films by auteur directors.
DVD stuff. But we also have classic gems like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Searchers. We've got some real some not too crazy movies, right?
There's gold amongst the madness.
More coffee for a brain.
Yeah, keep going. And we're also going to look occasionally at classics like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, movies you've definitely seen. We're going to look at Oscar winners like 12 Years a Slave. But we're trying to give as wide a breadth of films as possible, and our focus will be movies that you may not have seen or movies that you may not have understood at all. Not that we're going to understand them, but we're going to take our time and dive into them as deeply as possible. All right, so this first month of March, our theme this month is March Madness. It's
all basketball movies.
It's all basketball movies.
We're going to watch Killer Bud, or not Killer Bud.
Air Bud.
Air Bud, right? Killer Bud.
Killer Bud. It's hard, after watching the movies that we've watched for this month, it's hard not to go straight to Killer Bud.
Seriously, though.
The story of a dog that eats its owner.
He eats a high school varsity basketball team.
Right, and his owner sits quietly in the background and smokes a nervous cigarette. But
several nervous cigarettes.
Several. So the first movie on the docket this month, let's just dive right into it. We watched, this was a suggestion of yours, and I'm so glad you suggested this movie. It's In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes, my favorite John Carpenter movie.
You vamp, and I'm going to go get the deets.
So I'm a big fan of John Carpenter anyway. Like, The Thing is fantastic. He did Halloween. Who doesn't know the original Halloween? You hear that, you know you're watching Halloween. So the fact that this is my favorite John Carpenter movie surprises even me because of, like, you have Escape from New York
how
and
well
Prince
loved
of
his
Darkness
other
and
films are. Big
movie,
Trouble in Little China.
Exactly, yeah. So this movie, it's just, I think it's the time that I was watching it. I was a senior in high school. I watched it with my best friend at his house. We rented it on VHS when it came out.
Oh, this is a perfect VHS
movie.
Oh
my God,
if I could have got this on VHS.
We watched it and we were just freaked out enough to where he had to drive me home afterwards, and he kind of lives out in the woods a little bit. So there's a scene we can talk about later where they're driving to try and find Hobbs Knob or whatever, and the lights go out in the car, and there's a creepy kid on a bike. Well, he's driving me home, and guess what we pass? A fucking creepy kid on a bike.
Not an old man.
Not an old man, but like just enough, like we didn't say anything about it, but when my friend dropped me off at home, was like, so we gonna talk about that or no? Like, no, I feel like we probably shouldn't. That's fine.
That's not to think too bad or think too heavily about it, because you'll go mad.
You'll go mad. But it's just one of those cool stories that I didn't. I meant to look it up, but I don't recall which movie came out first: Wes Craven's New Nightmare or In the Mouth of Madness, because they're both movies about like a movie within a movie.
Well, this movie is either 1994
it's 95,
or 1995.
depending on where you look.
Right.
Right.
I found it when I went on Google and just looked. I like to get the basics of the films that we're doing. Google told me 94. IMDb told me 95.
95 was what IMDb said. Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what exactly that was about. But yeah, directed the fact that it was directed by John Carpenter. Sometimes when you watch a John Carpenter movie, it looks like a film, but you can see Halloween in this movie so clearly. That there's that scene where we basically have Mike Myers without his mask on, and we have the scene when the agent walks across the street.
Yes.
Absolutely
Love it. So In the Mouth of Madness follows an insurance investigator in Sam Neill.
Playing John Trent.
John Trent.
Yeah, and he's looking for a missing writer, Stephen King.
Stephen King, Sutter Kane.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, Sutter Kane.
Well, they quashed that one early because it's obvious that this author that he is tasked to look for to disprove some sort of insurance claim that the author is missing, and he doesn't have the pages for the most recent book that's called The In the Mouth of Madness. Is going to drive everybody crazy when they read it. So they very early say, he even outsells Stephen King. So they kind of squash that.
They tag Stephen King twice, too. Yeah. He's like, well, he's a pretty big author if he even outsells Stephen King, who he is not.
He is, right.
Right. But,
so it's like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We know.
So Sam Neill, I like that Sam Neill is an insurance investigator, and we get to it in a little bit why I like that so much. But, Sutter Kane's books, even his early works have a unique effect on the people who read them, right? So like they describe the effect as like paranoia and fear, and sometimes even like the hallucinations,
mild hallucinations,
right,
on their less stable readers.
And the only person who had read the new book was his agent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that. But like just to talk about Friday the 13th, not Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Or Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah.
The opening sequence to this book, or to this movie, when I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, let's see what this is about. And that music comes up, that like mid-90s, it's mid-90s montage music to a T. So that comes up, and then we get a bunch of macro shots of a printing press. And I can't remember which one it is, but there's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie that has a montage series of like machine parts, like Boiler Room, like close-ups of
I want to say that is the new Nightmares, the one before, the really, really campy one.
Yeah, is it the Dream Child or the Dream Warriors?
It's the one after that. It's the one where the one that was in 3D at the end.
Oh, right. But whatever it was, it couched me so perfectly in a time period.
You know where you are. You're in the 90s. You're watching a New Line Cinema horror flick.
Oh my God. I saw New Line Cinema and I was like, yes, I'm home.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
right.
home.
It's such a comfortable place to
And this whole movie has that weird, it has that 90s film feel that's so nostalgic. We talk a lot about the nitpicks, and we pull these movies apart when we get into them. Well, this is our first episode, but trust us, that's what we do.
Yep.
We dig into these little nitpicky details, but there's something to be said for the encompassing feel of a film. And this has been one of the best examples of just like I was immediately
horror
like
cinema,
yeah, I was immediately like 16 again. And I'm over at my friend Jared's house, and we're watching a movie that my parents would be so pissed if they knew I was
like, what are you watching? Is this an R? Are you watching an R? And
I love that one of our first lines of dialogue. So I like the structure of the movie. It's we do the bookended. The film is bookended by scenes where basically we see we start at a mental institution, and a screaming, raving maniac is brought in a straitjacket, and we're like, oh, okay, who's this? Because we know from the credits that Sam Neill will be our star.
Right, exactly.
And lo and behold, it's Sam Neill.
Sam Neill. Oh, hi.
And he's just
like seriously crazy, like playing it,
raving,
yes.
Raving lunatic. My favorite part about that opening scene is that almost our first line of actual dialogue from Sam Neill is, "I'm sorry about the balls.
Sorry about the balls.
It was really just a lucky shot." Or no, it was a lucky shot.
It was
that's
a lucky
all.
shot. That's all. Yep.
But yeah, the fact that we start there.
Yep.
I know that this is John Carpenter horror, but this is also Big Trouble in Little China John Carpenter. There are so many playful parts in this movie. But he takes us to the we start in this it's actually a water treatment plant is where they shot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, this was a common place to shoot like mental asylums and prison sequences. But post 9/11, no one's allowed to shoot there anymore.
Really?
Yeah, because it's an active water treatment plant,
no
and
shit.
they don't let large
Like,
groups
nope.
of people in. It's like on lockdown
Makes
all
sense.
the time. So this is one of those movies that was shot. In
That's
that
one of the thing because I've watched this movie several times since the 90s. This is one of my favorite movies. So one of the things that always sticks with me is that first scene. It's one of those weird things where we've watched or will be watching several movies that have an asylum in them, and they always have that dirty, dark sort of feel to them. But the entranceway lobby to this is like so clean and so white and crisp, and everyone is like, the doctors are very.
It almost looks like
hyper-real.
a sci-fi hotel.
It does, right?
Right.
You don't know whether you're in a John Carpenter horror movie or if you're in a,
Like some sort of far future.
Yeah, far future, like everyone's
like Mr.
happy.
Nobody
Yeah,
or-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does give you that little bit of. One of the things that I noticed with this more so, there's another movie that we're gonna do this month, The Machinist. But this movie, as well, to a small degree, creates this weird sense of unreality.
Yeah, just a little bit off.
Well, I wrote down, I don't want to get too nitpicky too quick,
That's
but
all right.
as far as the cinematography goes, I'm sure you noticed as well that even when Carpenter doesn't need to shoot with a super wide angle lens, he shoots with a super wide angle lens. And what that creates, for those of you who don't know, is when you use a really wide, like wide angle will catch like a panoramic view, but a super wide angle, like anything under like 18 millimeters, will create a fishbowl effect where the edges of the screen are distorted. And a lot of times, even in the early scenes, in the scenes where they're driving in the car looking for Hobbs End, in the scene at the church when they pan up the church, he's using that fishbowl lens effect so that at the edges of reality, the edges of reality are distorted and bowed and bent.
It also gives a larger scale to the object he's shooting too. Like that church that they shot wasn't as big as it appears to be. You know, when the way he's shooting it makes the Black Byzantine Church or whatever look like it's shadowing the entire town of Hobbs Knob. Hobbs Knob.
You're just gonna do that forever.
I'm just gonna call it Hobbs Knob.
Yeah.
Gobblers. It's because I keep getting Gobblers Knob. Like, this is not Groundhog's Day.
He does use he uses he uses like trick photography from time to time too. And I'm not talking about the effects, but like when we later, and by the way, we're just assuming that you've seen the movie, so we're not gonna,
always assume you've seen them. These are gonna be spoiler heavy. These are for you to sort of be like a companion piece to the movie,
right?
You know,
and I don't want to spend like the whole episode recapping what the plot.
No, we're just going to talk about the shit that we either liked or didn't like about it, and you can follow along.
Right, picking and digging in. So there's the scene when they first get to Hobbs End, and he's like, "This is reality, Linda." By the way, did you know that in this movie, Sam Neill, like,
his accent's horrible?
It is the most New Zealand, which is where he's from, the most New Zealand accent you've ever heard.
He dips in and out of like trying to cover it, not covering. It's kind of like he doesn't give a shit.
Yes,
like
it sounds like sometimes he like is kind of like half-assing a Sam Spade, like, "Linda, I'm an insurance investigator, and we've got to get to the bottom of this." And then other times he's like, "Over there, there's a crazy..."
Exactly.
"Oh my God, a bunch of children."
I was watching this with my girlfriend Danielle, and she's like, "What accent is he doing?" I'm like, "He's not. He's trying to do English, I think, and then like American English." And
he's
like,
flying so high on fucking Jurassic Park Bunny that he doesn't even
care at this point.
But no, so there's that scene where they open up the window, and he's like, "Look, there should be a Byzantine church," and it's just an old fucking barn.
Right.
That shot of that barn is one of the scariest things in the movie, just because like
it's
something
like so
about
weird.
The picture, it seems to be like floating. I think he's on like a really intense zoom.
Yeah.
So that we're seeing it the way that they're seeing it, like zoomed in. and it creates like this little wobble in the image where I'm like, is the barn not real?
That's weird.
Is that not real? Is that a mirage barn? And then she, of course, goes, you didn't read carefully enough, and opens the curtain, and lo and behold, there's that big fucking evil church.
Church.
So when they shoot that church, we get a couple times, but this is the most pronounced, we get a Dutch tilt. A heavy Dutch tilt, like a 45-degree angle Dutch tilt, like that.
You're looking up at skirt, essentially.
That church is showing you leg.
It's showing you its balls.
It's just a lucky shot. So we see a heavy Dutch tilt, and the next shot is a super wide-angle fish bulb pan to the top. So the church, the two like establishing shots of the church, are completely off kilter.
Yeah.
Like as off kilter as you can possibly get. There's other weird things about Hobbs End too, and one of them is the fact that Happy Gilmore's grandmother runs the hotel.
That's who that was.
Yeah, that crazy old lady. Well, the
my
second
God.
I saw her, I'm like, hey, is that? And then she opened her mouth. I'm like, it's Happy Gilmore's grandma. Oh my God, my hands are tired. Well, yeah, well, all of you's about to be like,
right. Oh my God,
that is totally who the fuck that is. So, by the way, I thought that the most horrifying part of her character is the contrast between, in my mind, my first introduction to her, Happy Gilmore's grandmother,
right,
and her naked, decrepit husband handcuffed to her ankle.
Yes.
I was like, what the fuck? Well, because we know from Linda that in the book,
she chops up her husband
with an axe, right, into little pieces, and then Sam Neill's like, Linda, the only thing that she's capable of doing is dropping her husband's dentures in his coleslaw, you know,
in his beer,
right, his beer. Over there,
right?
But no, like we know that Linda thinks chop him up. Sam Neill's like, you're fucking crazy. It's Happy Gilmore's grandma.
Right, exactly.
Did you see Happy Gilmore Linda, which hasn't been made yet?
He doesn't call her Linda. Calls her
Styles. It might be either Stykes or no. It's Styles because in The Machinist, his landlady's name is Shrike, and that's why I'm getting mixed up.
Interesting.
But yeah, so the space in between is what's scary to me because she's not chopping up her husband yet, and Sam Neill's not entirely wrong. She seems like kind of tired.
The nice grandma. Well, she hasn't slept. Her
but
eyes are real red.
There's that moment of naked handcuffed husband right before she chops him up. That liminal space between between her being like an otter monster and like totally innocuous is creepy because it really lets you know that nothing is as it seems. Yeah, I just I mean, this movie has so many great little Carpenter moments before they get to Hobbs End.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, because it just starts right off with, is this all happening for real? Is it a hoax? Is it a... Because it's under the assumption that at first, the publishing company is setting up an elaborate hoax. They send Sutter Kane away for 2 to 3 weeks to stage a disappearance, to bring up book sales for his newest book, right, In the Mouth of Madness.
I thought it was interesting because we do find out. You're right that we do find out she her name is Linda, right?
Yeah. I think so.
Well, she does confess.
She admits,
she says,
you're right, but that's how I know that you're wrong.
Right. We sent him away. We staged this as a like a publicity stunt. We sent him away for 2 to 3 weeks, but the fact that I know that that's what we did is how we know this is wrong. I think it's interesting that his agent actually, in fact, went insane and tried to kill Sam Neill with an axe and was shot to death.
Yes.
And the publishing house didn't even bat an eye.
No.
They just...
They're like, well...
They're like, everyone hold the line.
Hold
the line. Hold. Like, if you think about that publishing house is they're monstrous.
Well, it's Charlton Heston is their
head, their
whatever,
CEO.
yeah. So,
but so you maybe expect that from him, you know.
Oh boy, was he phoning it in?
Oh, he was barely.
Hey, hold my calls. I gotta talk to this guy. So, Sutter Kane is missing a line. Oh, you're rolling. God damn it.
It's pretty good, Charles Neston.
He talks from the bottom of his jaw a lot. You see a lot of his teeth.
Well, you just expect it's in Michael Fassbender too.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, you see that whole bottom row.
The whole bottom row, but
It's very beautiful.
But no, you're right. It's like, oh shit, this didn't work out well. But
think-
still, bring the insurance adjuster in,
think
and
the moment that the
cops shoot
agent,
right.
Yeah, as soon as he destroys the window and has an axe. Now, here's the other thing that I like. I had
Their
considered,
HR department must have been like shitting their pants.
like, we're gonna get so fucking
so
sued.
sued.
Oh, we're so sued.
No, just send Linda out with Sam Neill.
No, it's fine, guys. We're just gonna keep doing
It's
the petty
fine.
bullshit.
We're
that
gonna
we
have
were
him
doing.
read some books and put a map together from the cover page. Like what
That
the
was
fuck?
his scissor skills were so on point. When
right.
he looks at like a couple of by the way, did you see the actual New Hampshire that he like cuts out of
the
6 book? When you look at the pieces that he cut him out of, I'm like,
They're
there's
perfectly aligned.
And also, there's nothing in any of them to indicate that they should be. You could have taken 6 blank pieces of paper and cut them
Yes.
to make New Hampshire the exact same way. I'm like, what the fuck was he looking at that made him see?
It was the red. It was the red lines that are through each of the covers.
That makes
there
the
are
map?
yeah there are red
Okay.
lines like almost like the book covers are sort of tearing apart. Like there's an energy underneath them. Like,
Oh,
sort
I
of,
see.
that was like
And
an
when you
artistic
cut
choice.
along
You
the
cut
red
along
lines.
those red lines.
Okay, I didn't
yeah.
see that. So when I first
Well, it
saw
didn't-
that,
I was looking for them because I remember like noticing that the first time I
you
saw
have
these.
seen it before.
Oh yeah.
Okay, if I watched it again, I would have looked closely at
You
those
can
book
see
covers.
that he is tracing along these red lines that
Okay.
are part of the artist. He did his because Sutter Kane did his own artwork as well, right?
Gotcha.
So-
Well, when I saw it, my first thought was like, well, it could have been. He could have done California.
Right,
he could have done
he's
Michigan.
it's New Hampshire. It's like,
Look, I made a collage of New Hampshire.
Right.
This doesn't help us at all. I have no idea where Sutter Kane
Well,
is.
I
But
like
isn't
that
that a goddamn good New
I
Hampshire?
like that he must have gone to like an Office Max or whatever, got the acetate to put over and trace it. Like he did
He's
a lot
a
of
professional.
He did a lot of arts and crafts to
That's when
present that map to.
It gets interesting when you run into a professional,
It-
and he's a
right,
professional.
he's a professional.
He's a professional.
Oh my God.
But I want to go back really quick to the agent because it had occurred to me that maybe cops, they're like actors, it's blanks, maybe it's staged,
Right.
but there's that double pupil effect, which is so fucking awesome. That effect that Carpenter does to give him that double split pupil, that was fucking spooky.
Yes.
I watched this broad daylight and I was like, oh, something about eyes. I don't know what it is.
Well, the eyes are the windows to the soul, my dear.
That is
so
true, and in his soul lies madness.
absolutely.
In the Mouth of Madness, 1995. John
I see
Carpenter.
you. He sees you.
Bleeding out of
Bleeding
the
eyes,
eyes
yeah.
too. That's something about that spooky as shit. I like that Sam Neill goes in and he's like, I gotta see what this Sutter Kane's about. Better buy all his books.
All of his books. I've got an extra 45 minutes tonight. I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, I got a half a pack of cigarettes, a cup of coffee in 40 minutes. I can just read all these.
What is it with the smoking? Because we watch these movies out of order. And
We watched. Yeah, at this point we have seen all of the movies for March Madness.
Can we pick? Did we pick some movies coming up that don't have quite as much smoking?
Well, they're all
in them?
westerns, so no.
Fuck.
I know. Karl has recently quit smoking, and my God, does Sam Neill smoke a sexy cigarette?
The way he just puts it in his mouth is
Yeah,
sexy. He puts
it's
it like
that
kind
Sam
of crooks it
Spade
in. Like,
thing.
yeah.
He screws a cigarette into the corner of his
Yeah, it's
mouth. Yeah, there's something real manly and gruff about Sam Neill smoking, and also, my God, the squinting.
Oh, through the
His don't let the smoke get in your eyes face, but somehow, like, my first impulse is I'm like, I'm gonna mock that, and then I'm like, yeah, but he looks pretty good.
He looks pretty good. It's
Man,
okay.
he looks pretty good. Everyone smokes such a great cigarette.
Yeah, they're smoking them 90s cigarettes, man.
Those 90s cigarettes were a different animal.
They were
Different
smoking
animal.
jarums and shit.
They came with chest hair and a cowboy hat.
Exactly.
We'll get to it when we get to the Machinist, but those are the grossest looking cigarettes that we've seen.
Yes.
Like the Machinist by far, and I think it might just, but they're not talking about the Machinist.
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
All right. More in the Mouth of Madness stuff. Jesus, there's so fucking
know.
much. Well, one of the things I like about the Sutter Kane connection is Stephen King and John Carpenter are actually real life friends.
Yes.
Carpenter also directed one of Stephen King's adaptations. John Carpenter directed Christine.
That's right.
So I feel like a lot of the Stephen King stuff is a nod, but I was really disappointed when we finally meet Sutter Kane, and it wasn't.
It wasn't
Stephen
a nerdy
King.
like.
No, I wanted.
Glasses, yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted Stephen because Stephen
It was
King has
Jorgen-
been in stuff. Like he's in Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, yeah.
He makes little appearances in a lot of the movie adaptations of his stuff. Can you imagine if those like
Doors
were
open?
banging and it's Stephen King in like some weird ass makeup? I would have got up out of my seat and applauded.
Yeah, I'm like, well done.
I'm like, oh my God, I recognize under that fake schnoz
You did
Mr.
it.
Stephen King. But I guess there's maybe too much acting and
Right.
stuff
Well, I
like
mean,
that. He's actually Sutter Kane is actually more of a parallel to H.P. Lovecraft.
oh, absolutely. With the things from
The old ones,
Yep.
you know, like the
Yeah.
things from beyond, and even the idea at the very end of the movie, as you can see, we're just jumping all over. At the very end of the movie, when Sutter Kane rips that hole and there's all the pages, and Sam Neill looks,
into the void.
you'd think there's like most filmmakers would show you the horrors that he was seeing. Like if this was a Nightmare on Elm Street film,
Right.
we would see hell and we'd see these like
The
bad,
fires,
bad
yeah.
monsters
Yep.
roiling out of them, and the effects would never do it justice. But seeing Sam Neill just stare at ostensibly nothing,
Blackness, yeah.
yeah, just staring into blackness, and behind him, Linda's reading the end of Sutter Kane's last book, and she's describing the horrors. I thought that was so perfect
Yes.
because at the end, you know, like this. Sutter Kane is writing reality. He essentially becomes God, and
I'm written that way. Like,
right, he wants me to kiss you now. He thinks the readers will love it. You know, like so, like the way that a book, like an innocuous passage of a book, can like break your brain with horror.
yes.
But if someone tried to show you that, you'd be able to like comprehend it. I think part of the fear is when you see something, you can like do your best to rationalize it.
Yeah, reading it's just in your head.
Right, and also when you read it, the author can say things like it was too horrifying for his mind to hold, and then your brain immediately is
I
like,
can't comprehend that.
right, because the author's told you that you can't.
Right.
And if he tried to show it, it would have been wrecked. I loved that so much, but that passage that she reads, that is H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes.
That is directly out of a story called The Rats in the Walls.
Is it really?
Yeah, that I read when I was younger.
Oh my goodness.
All of the passages, after I recognized that one at the end, I went and looked. And because I was a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan growing up, and I'm like, this all sounds like a lot like H.P. Lovecraft. And then I heard that, and I'm like, I
That
loved
is.
that story. That is fucking H.P. Lovecraft with like a few words changed.
Yeah.
And that's what Carpenter did. Is he took big fucking whacks of H.P. Lovecraft and just threw it in there.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I know. It's oh god, it's good.
Because they are the old ones. I mean, they're all like these little the Cthulhu's. Cthulhites.
I cannot verify this because I had rented it and had to go to work right after I finished watching it, but more little detail work, which I love in movies about people going crazy and unreality. Remember the bit in the end when they're on the bus? And
Yes, did I
Sutter
ever
Kane
mention
goes,
my favorite color is blue?
and bling. Apparently, throughout the entire film, every close-up of every actor, when we're in close-up, they all have blue eyes.
What?
Think about the split pupils. All the split pupils are blue.
Are blue?
Right.
Shit.
But I haven't gone through and checked this frame
Well,
by
now I
frame.
have to.
Right, we're gonna go
Kinda.
back, but
Oh my
I cannot verify it. But the few that I thought of, I was like, oh yeah. And apparently the big thing is that it changes. They're not wearing those contacts all the time. It's only when you go to close up.
Only in close-up,
Because
okay.
when the writer is doing that detail work.
Doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter because it's his favorite color, but apparently anytime we're in close up, everyone's eyes in the entire movie are blue. And if that is true,
I feel like Linda's eyes were brown.
I feel like they were too, but are they brown in the super close-ups? I don't know.
Oh my god, I don't know now.
Drives you a little bit crazy, right?
Kind of.
It's like the famous movie Lie from Silence of the Lambs, which would be so much better if it were true. There's there's an old chestnut about that movie that Anthony Hopkins' character never blinks at all while he's being filmed, but it's not true. He blinks repeatedly in the film. But when I first heard that, that became the thing about that movie, which I was obsessed with, and now this is the thing where
It's
I'm
like,
like,
no, it's blue eyes,
if
right?
Carpenter could keep that, if he could maintain that throughout the whole movie,
I feel like Carpenter's more the kind of he is more like just having fun making movies, and I don't know that he has that attention to detail. But maybe he does because that is a fun sort of thing to throw in there.
Right.
Right.
he does seem like the kind of guy who's gonna do just whatever we need to do for the day's shot, and let's get on to the next crazy monster effect tomorrow, like the wall of monsters in the end. That was great.
Yeah.
But he does have a close eye for detail, even in movies like Halloween. Like his choices for cinematography. We should do Halloween eventually, but like for example when I think his choices are well thought out, maybe not so fine as like, all right, we need to coordinate every close-up shot we need to have.
Well, I think that he does in that, like, when you're watching a John Carpenter movie, they have a certain feel and look to them.
Right.
You know, whether through the effects or his choice of camera angles, or
except for Ghosts of Mars.
That is the one that we don't speak about.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
Or Escape from LA. Both of those.
But Escape from New York was great.
I love it.
Yeah, John Carpenter has a lot. When you look at his IMDb page, he has a lot more directing credits than you think he does. You recognize like half. And you're like,
score writing. Like he writes most of the music for most of his stuff and performs it as well. Anything synthy is him.
It wasn't so much in this one. I was looking for it.
Him and one other person.
Yeah, I was looking for it more in this one because you can tell. You can hear the Carpenter... The Carpenter
stuff, right?
Yeah, the synthy stuff, but also he does have he's very like not simplistic but minimalist. He's got a very minimalistic composition style. There's other movies that he does where, you'll hear that synth sound, but also sometimes like you can hear strings. Or you can hear like clean piano and you can still tell. This one I felt was more the other gentleman's work than John Carpenter's work.
I think that's fair enough. But he does have that eye for detail, though. I think, like, if everyone's eyes are blue in this, then it was definitely
If that is true,
that
would be amazing. I know. Not to say I did not have any issues.
Oh, I have a lot of this movie. I have a hard time. It doesn't really stand up. It is a '90s movie.
I wanted to know what the fuck was going on. Like, what is Stiles' choice? The character who plays Linda, the actress who plays Linda Stiles, like. I get her at first. She's like snooty, highfalutin.
But she's just always sort of
Well, it's that, but like when Sam Neill's driving.
Yeah.
Like Sam Neill sees a couple of weird things, and then Stiles starts driving, and she sees
all the weird things.
She sees the kid on the bike riding into the darkness. He won't let me leave. And then the old man and and then she sees like the weird stars and the
car is just floating in the middle of space.
Flying in the sky, and then she drives into, and Sam Neill wakes up and he's like, oh, wow, that's great. And they get to town and she sees the dog and the children running after the dog. Meanwhile, Sam Neill's like, antiques, what a bunch of shit this is. Hey, what's going on? Why do you look so scared?
Going bonkers the whole time.
Right, like she seems so susceptible. Like Sam Neill gets to the church and she's like, we've got, like, her whole job is to find her missing author. She's like, we gotta get out of here. We gotta go. There's guns. And then, by the way, if any of that was set up, sacrificing 2 people to be eaten by dogs.
Right.
Like, all right, well, we're going to pay you, you guys are extras, so we're going to pay you $5 a day.
$5.
You're going to get killed by a Doberman. You're going to get killed by a Doberman.
Make sure you visit craft services before you go on the show.
Yeah, you're going to want to try the ceviche that we brought here before you're killed by the dog. Right, so, like, but yeah, immediately, I felt like, but then other times, when they're, like, in the hotel and Sam Neill's like, we're done. All right, we're done here. This is all just a bunch of bullshit. She's like, no, we need to soldier on. And he's like, well, why didn't we soldier on when you were running the fuck away in mad terror at the church? She's such a polarized character. At the church, she's in terror. And then later, when a child with a demon's face and double eyes is like, give me my ball, she's like, all right, here you go, kid. Nothing at all.
Right.
Not worried in the
slightest. You're our mummy.
Yeah.
Play with this mummy's day. And she's like, I don't like you kids. I'm going to go in the church, creepy church now.
Hold on. Let me light this cigarette. All right, what do you want? What do you fucking demon children want? No fear at all. No. And then other times it's like, oh no, a Ford truck is approaching. We need to go.
We need to go.
Oh my God, we need to go.
It's a pre-catalytic converter Ford. You know how much carbon monoxide is
the emissions. The emissions on that truck. Trent, don't make me watch the emissions off the truck anymore. And like,
she has another warbling sort of accent that goes in and out too.
She really does. But when we first meet her, she's so stolid. I was expecting that.
Right.
And we don't get that.
No.
We get I'm stolid.
She immediately
oh my
starts
God, a
going,
dog. Right.
going poopy pants.
She was crazy.
Yeah.
They get to the and you expect Sam Neill as our POV character to be like something weird.
Something's weird. He's like
Something weird's going on here.
But no, he's like, they didn't even finish painting the. They're doing a horrible job on this town. It's gonna make lots of money dollars for the book.
Money dollars, yeah. Whatever he's paying you, he's wasting his money.
He's wasting his money.
But you know, like I actually like his performance, but I wanted her to have a little more backbone, to be our like through line. But the second
she's the one that goes bonkers first, and I think it's because probably she's closer to Sutter Kane, and she's being written that way.
She's read his work. Well, Sam Neill is too. But
well, that's right.
One of the things that I loved about Sam Neill, to jump to him, is. And this is more the writing than his performance, although he sells it very well, is one of the hardest things to do in fiction is to beat disbelief. So when your characters are exposed to like an impossible situation, like, I'm telling you, the town's overrun by vampires, right? To get the story moving, you have to have a moment where your character's like, well, just say I believed it, and then they slowly come around.
Right.
And they're like, okay, my God, it is vampires. We need to start cutting our neighbors' heads off and stuffing them full of garlic. You know, Sam Neill never, until the very, very end, flips. And that's always hard, because if you constantly have a hero who's digging his heels in and he's like, no, this is bullshit. No, I don't believe in vampires. It's zombies, I'm telling you.
It's
not zombies.
So
it can't. That's just not true. You know, like if you have
there would be a grain of doubt that then starts to turn away.
And the thing, just from a nuts and bolts storytelling perspective, if your protagonist never goes with the flow, there's no flow.
No.
If he just digs his heels in, and
it's really irritating to watch.
Right.
You're like, come on.
Well, what I loved is in this instance, Trent's disbelief drives the plot.
Right.
That's brilliant. Finding a way to have a character who's like digging his heels in, and rather than stopping the story cold because you usually need your hero to play along.
Right.
He's like, fuck that. I'm not playing along with any of this. You know?
I'm gonna smoke you another cigarette.
I'm gonna smoke the sexiest cigarette you ever saw. But no,
that's him screwing the cigarette
into his mouth. But the fact that he doesn't believe allows the story to move forward, because it allows John Carpenter to heap more weird shit. If he was going along with it, we would sort of like skip ahead to like, all right, well, we do need to find Sutter Kane, and then it would turn into an adventure movie. Whereas this turns into a great, like, slowly the slow eating away of someone's sanity, because rather than just go with the flow and reframe his world to accept that supernatural things are happening.
And I think that the moment that he actually flips is when
he sees the painting turn and look at him.
No, I don't think it's that. It's when the dude blows his own head off, because he's still like, you guys are real professionals. You guys are like, he's got the mob. He's looped back around into the town. He's trying to escape in his car, and he gets caught in that loop of can't escaping.
Doesn't the guy...
and he gets out, and then... Or does it happen after? Either way, but
no, you're right.
It's when the guy blows his head off that he's like, oh, no, shit.
The looping happens after he sees that. So even then, he's still questioning, because when he's driving, he says that line where he says, like, a couple of wrong turns, just got turned around.
Right.
So he still thinks,
he's still like,
okay, somehow they rigged up.
You see that moment of acceptance, too, like the third or fourth time it happens. He's like, not even freaked out anymore. He's like, oh, he's almost laughing. Okay, yep, here we go. It's back into town. and then he needs you to do something for him.
It's weird. I cannot remember. I remember when he crashes the car.
Yeah.
Because he sees Linda in the road and he like swerves and crashes, but I don't remember what happens directly after that.
Like when he wakes up. Sutter Kane is doing something. What does happen right after he wakes up?
I don't remember how we get from that to being
him in the church.
Like there is a blank space.
He wakes up and he's in the confessional.
Oh, that's why there's a blank space. It's a huge jump in time.
It's a huge jump in time. He's just sitting in a confessional with Sutter Kane, as the priest.
By the way, was a great move. The cinematography of that top-down shot, that was beautiful. And I'm wondering, like, we've seen confessional shots before. A lot of times they do, like, super close-up stuff. But Sin City in particular does that really long top-down shot. I found out something interesting about the bird's eye view cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Neill started his career as a director and advised John Carpenter that in the hotel and in the confessional might be a good idea to shoot from the top down to create that reader perspective, whereas we're looking down at the characters as they bustle
really
around.
cool.
And Carpenter took his suggestions, and that's why those shots are in there. I thought that was pretty sweet. Sam Neill's delivery. I had a favorite line because I wrote worst line delivery ever, ? And I kept watching for a little bit. And then I went back and I wrote best line delivery ever. It's when he's arguing with Linda right after he has become convinced that the whole thing's a put on. It's when she reveals that, yes, it was, but that's how I know it's not.
Right.
And he goes, have me come out here and get a little scared and have this big insurance scam so I can help you sell a few million more copies. Well, fuck that. He's almost out of breath when he says it.
Fuck that.
He's barely breathing when he says it, but when he goes, he's like at the end. He's at the absolute end of his breath, and he goes, well, fuck. It's like barely speech. And I was like, all right, come on. Is John Carpenter really? He's not going to take
that one.
He's not going to take another pass at that. And then I'm like, worst line ever. And I keep moving on. And I kept thinking about it. And I'm like, that was fucking brilliant. That was so good.
Best.
That
line
was the
ever?
Best line delivery ever. Like the fact that he found the extra teaspoon of breath
just
to
that
get
little
that. Oh my god! And it's so the way that you actually would be if you were that enraged.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be like, help you sell a few more million copies. Well, fuck that. No, you'd be like, and then you're like, and I need one more thing to say. You've made me ache. Fuck. And he gets it out. I was like, bravo, Sam Neill.
Well done.
Well done, sir. I loved that. And then I had it, and at this point, I'm just sort of like ping, 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 trying to do some housekeeping before we get to the ending, which was the most bullshit ending of all time.
Yep. Oh, it's such a throwaway.
I like the movie, but oh my god, it's like it's kind of like a Stephen King novel where he just doesn't know how to end it.
It's aliens and end scene, right?
Right. Yeah. You're like.
Because it's set up, it's bookended, right? He starts in the asylum, we end in the asylum. You're assumed he's the last sane person left on Earth.
Stop. We're in the asylum. Things are going crazy. Let me wonder.
Yeah.
He's like, and now 40-minute denouement. It's not 40, but it's like 10 minutes
it's
more
like,
movie than you need.
All you need is him walking out of the asylum and listening to the broadcast. This is a recording. If you can hear this,
Right. If you end it in the lobby. Okay. If we end it in the lobby, I'm happy as hell. Like, end it in the lobby. He hears the broadcast, and we zoom out or whatever. But he goes outside and he wanders to town, and in town.
Oh my God! There's a movie directed by John Carpenter called In the Mouth of Madness.
But it stars John Trent and Linda Stiles, and you're like, oh, so now it becomes so meta and so far flung at the end. I even kind of liked that, but at this point I was like starting to cash out. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then the end of the movie is I'm sitting in the theater watching the movie, and I'm like,
the thing that went in my head is when will them be now? I was like, are we watching Spaceballs the movie now?
Yeah,
it's like in the Mouth of Madness the movie.
It pretty much becomes that. So I mean the end, I don't know. The end I
always had a problem with the end.
I was so upset with that. I was like, what are we doing here? Are we doing predestination? Is this give me the if we were to end it in the H.P. Lovecraft tradition, this would end with like the broadcast, and we'd do a pan out, and we would see there's no ocean, but there would be an ocean, and we would see like some dark shape rising, and then we'd cut.
That's it, right?
Because you can't. The moment you show us what happens, I'm like, so what happens is bullshit.
Right.
Bullshit is what happens.
Yes.
All right. I got nothing else for this except if there's no smoking in the hotel, why does she have an ashtray on the...
So that they can put their... Because this was the 90s when people would just think it's okay to walk in with a lit cigarette, and that's where you can extinguish your cigarette. So, sorry, this is no smoking. Oh, terribly sorry. Let me put my cigarette out. Yeah.
Okay.
That used to be a thing.
All right. Well, thank you for... I've never smoked cigarettes.
I smoked for a long time.
Well, there you go. No, because I was always wanting... Because you're right. It's in the liminal space between if you're not smoking, the owner's offended. Like, what, you don't feel comfortable smoking here?
Right.
Here's a fucking cigarette, you know.
Right, exactly.
So, like... It's between that space and like if they smell a sealed packet of cigarettes in your pocket, you're taken outside and shot.
Right.
So we're in between that space.
In that
okay.
hallway.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I mean, I'll tell you right now, not this movie was delightful.
Yes.
Because it's a 90s
It's a
New
fun
Line
romp,
cinema
man.
movie.
It's
but
great.
And I'm sure on
It's
second
schlock.
on second watch, there's gonna be more stuff to catch and pick.
There is.
But on the whole, boy, did that ending take the wind out of my sails.
Yep.
I didn't
Dumped
even,
it. Yeah.
So in the Mouth of Madness, which is itself a pastiche of H.P. Lovecraft's story at the Mountains of Madness.
I love it.
I love it. You know what? I loved it too. It was a good movie. So I got nothing else.
Perfect.
You have anything else?
I don't. I'm really excited about the Patreon exclusives that we are going to have.
Right. Oh, we should do some housekeeping.
Yeah. A little bit of housekeeping.
Okay, so yeah, every month we're going to put out 4 episodes on iTunes available to the public. We're going to put them out 4 at a time so you can binge the episodes and watch the movies at your own pace, at your leisure. But we are also doing there's going to be an attached Patreon. So there will be a Patreon associated with this podcast. And what we're going to do is, as of right now, any movie that has a remake, sometimes movies that have a long series of sequels, we're going to do episodes for those remakes. Sometimes we're going to do episodes for the sequels. Like, for example, in the future, we have a horror, when we're doing a bunch of horror films, and we might do I Spit on Your Grave.
Right.
But we're going to do all of the I Spit on Your Grave movie, the original, the remake, I Spit on Your Grave 2 and 3, and we're going to do all 4 of those with a special guest reviewer and talk about those and release that whole package as a Patreon exclusive.
Exactly.
We might, as we talked about at the head of the show, we might do a couple of new release type things to make it more of a review show. But there'll be lots. Hopefully, eventually, there will be lots of extra content. Lots of episodes you won't be able to hear on iTunes, and lots of movies that might be a bit too extreme for the standard show.
There are some that I want to dig into, especially that it might be a little bit too.
Right, I'd love to do. We're doing an exploitation, a month of exploitation films, and some of the ones we talked about, films that we both love, might be a touch too porny.
Just a little bit.
for the standard. I'd love to do Cannibal Holocaust.
I was going to say Cannibal Holocaust is always sort of like that. It's right out there.
It's
isn't
when you say like the movie that might be too much.
It's always Cannibal Holocaust.
So I'd love to do that movie, but if we do, it'll be a Patreon.
They eat a live sea turtle.
They do. Animals died making that movie.
What the fuck?
But you know what? Even with the animal cruelty, which is cringeworthy.
Yes.
That movie's, as far as horror goes, if you are into extreme horror, it's a pretty fucking good movie. And we'll talk about that over on Patreon.
Yep.
All right, so that's all I've got for you today. Actually, we're not doing this as a next week type thing.
Nope.
But, keep on rolling. Our next episode's going to be A Scanner Darkly. Then we're doing The Machinist, and we're ending with Adrian Brody's descent into morgue drawer madness in The Jacket. All right, so... oh yeah, we're doing a bad intro or a bad outro. All right,
this is on you.
So here we go. Oh shit, I was gonna write a bunch of these down. We don't have our outros figured out, so off the top of my head, we're gonna say, the floors are sticky, the monsters were icky. That was In the Mouth of Madness. We'll catch you next time.